Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, good afternoon. Bleh. Good afternoon, evening. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Welcome to Feedback Friday, Art Edition. I'm your host, Jacob. Welcome to the stream. We're going to keep it relatively short today. Um, I'm going to be streaming up until I usually do my lunch, and that'll be that for today. But it should be a good one. Um, So I'm working on new character, of course. Lots of those to be done still, but I'm working on one that I started quite a while ago, actually, and it's been giving me some of that kind of like difficulty as an artist, where sometimes you're working on a piece and it kind of resists you. Um, the concept of like writer's block can happen with art, where it just kind of something just it's not right. It doesn't look the way you want it to, or when you go to work on it, it's just not kind of flowing. Um, so I figured today I would kind of revive that one that I was working on. And usually on stream, I tend to have just kind of like a lot of momentum, even if I'm not kind of like feeling it working, it just happens because I have a live audience and the show must go on. Whereas when I'm working on my own, when I run into that, I kind of can end up puttering around or, you know, working on something else and finding productivity there. But this one needs to get done, and it's been too long on it. So I'm going to just kind of pull it up and we're just going to get going. A permanent case of artist block. That sounds really frustrating and difficult. I know that um, some people can definitely experience a lot of that. Like when you're working as an illustrator, for example, like you do kind of just have to be able to push through it. It's not that I couldn't kind of like work and finish on this piece. I might not be like totally happy with the result, but like it'll get done. But I just had so many other things I could go and work on that I just kind of keep putting this one off. So yeah, but I mean it's kind of one of those the creative element, the working on creative things, is one of those things where some people think you need to have kind of like motivation or like that inspiration to fuel the creation of stuff. And I kind of have the belief that motivation is not a lie, but it's not something that you need to kind of like create. And I used to kind of like want to make certain things, do cool things, and I'd only ever try working on them when I was kind of like passionately inspired. And often I'll start out that way. I'll have this really cool project idea I really want to do, and it'll get going, and it goes, and it's really exciting, and then it gets difficult, and it kind of seizes up, and then it just kind of halts. It grinds to a halt. Um, and sometimes you're like, I really want to like work on this project idea, and you kind of like never start it because you're just waiting for that lightning bolt of inspiration to give you the fuel you need. And yeah, you can't rely on that kind of energy to get stuff done. So over time, I learned to just kind of like instead decide to be determined as like an emotional state, just like I'm just gonna work at it. And I've found that once something is started, even though it's really difficult to get something started, once it's started, it is so much easier. Even if it's not always kind of like if it's fighting you on the way, that's the thing that does happen. But if you can persist, the more you do that, the better you get at being able to kind of like keep pushing through. So I mean, in general, like with artwork for me, I've been doing this for 17 years. It's not a problem to just like get going on a thing and like get somewhere with it. And I may not be like, oh man, this is like totally fire. Um, but you know, it, in the end, I tend to get to a space where I'm like really happy with it, because I've kind of practiced that that muscle flex there. Just kind of like I'm just gonna keep working at it, and figure it out without kind of like needing my muse to get me there. So at any rate, yeah, this is a case where I just kind of like had other things I could tackle, so I just kind of put it off and put it off. And today, I'm gonna destroy it. All right, so let's actually jump into this and get going. So, uh, I have here a character who just recently started tilting at windmills. Um, you're probably familiar with the character this is based off of. Any guesses in the chat? Because we're kind of working off of a lot of famous literary characters. So this one definitely takes the cake as being quite a famous one. Now she's altered in her state here, a mouse, and not an extremely old man. Um, but yeah, yep. What I was describing is how you feel about career related projects versus hobby related projects, and absolutely true. Um, like for me working on MouseHunt, it is a career related hobby. I actually really have a lot of passion for this project. It really is something that inspires me. I'm fueled by it. I really legitimately enjoy and love working on this. And yeah, there are days when it's kind of like, ah, oh, this is fighting me, and it's frustrating. But um, you do get through that. But yeah, when it comes to like personal hobbies, it's one of those things where it's like, well, it's not a big deal if I just kind of set it aside and don't kind of finish it. It's no one's relying on me to do this, right? Um, so that's kind of like a big difference. To be fair, is you need to kind of like hold yourself accountable. All right, so Larry the Friendly Mouse. That's good. No, it is not based on Larry, who is not a kind of, very old uh, literary character in terms of kind of timeline in real world terms. This is a character based on Don Quixote. Um, a old man who read a lot of fantasy novels and became so enamored with the kind of the knights and um, uh, that kind of like culture. I'm trying to think of the word. Oh, it it eludes me. I I do not have enough sleep in me. I'm very kind of like poop brain today, so apologies for my weird ramblings. But chivalry, that's the word. Mm. Thought it was about a donkey named Hote. Yeah, so it's about a guy who he read a lot of fantasy stories about knights and chivalry, and was very excited and passionate about that to the point where he donned a suit of armor and roamed the countryside, kind of finding adventure and uh, attempting heroic deeds, often with perilous kind of results. He ended up kind of like uh, taking on a squire who tried to give him sense and reason. But yeah, he at one point famously battled windmills, believing them to be giants. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Christian, great question. Before submitting a trap or a mouse and implementing it in the game, do you get other artists or the devs to peer review it? Yeah, we absolutely do. So we have kind of like various channels in our work chat. We use Slack, lets us work remote and collaborate. And basically, we have a kind of like art team channel where we actually share kind of work in progress. We'll pretty much always share like, hey, here's a sketch that I'm working on for this character. What do you think? Much like when I'm working on something and I'm getting feedback from live chat. Um, Usually we'll work until we kind of like, okay, here's the idea that you can really kind of boil out of this. Sometimes it'll be like really rough sketches to just kind of be like, what I'm looking for feedback on the gesture for this character, or like, does this have the energy we want? Or am I totally, like off with this character? But a lot of the time, we'll actually work it up to the point where we have some color, we have, a lot of the details kind of started, but it's not fully rendered, because we're all pretty experienced at working on this, and we all have a really good sense of like what are we looking for this piece. Uh, so often it'll be a case where we get it to nearly kind of like ready to be rendered state before we even grab that feedback. Um, Actually, I think I'm going to go for a yellow feather here. Uh, and that's, generally the flow of it. It works pretty well for us. And yeah, when it comes to the like mice and traps, we'll kind of usually mainly go for the feedback within the art team itself. Um, but if it's like gameplay related, like a special mouse, or a item that needs to kind of have like properties, all kinds of things, we'll kind of like make sure that whoever has the kind of like um, you know knowledge about like, okay, well, it needs to do this, so it needs to look kind of like that to relate that idea. We'll kind of get their input, and also we have regular kind of check-in meetings like once a week to kind of go over like, here's what's being worked on, here's what we've recently kind of finished up, and it gives us another opportunity to share with the whole team or whoever's kind of working on that release together, to kind of get to at least see what's being worked on, and they can give feedback if they want. But most of the time, it's very much a case of like the art team is pretty well trusted in terms of kind of like, okay, they know exactly what we're looking for and they'll deliver. Because at least when it comes to the visuals, we are the experts. And often it'll be kind of down to us to make those determinations. All right. So basically with this one, it's kind of more just like I'm going to be rendering it out. There's a couple elements that I'm missing in this piece. I want to get a piece of fabric that has writing on it. That's kind of part of the design for the characters of this region. So what I'm thinking is I'll have like a ribbon billowing off the lance here. Okay. Mhm. How many mice do we have for this area, and how many has the art team completed? That is definitely, I can't get into the specifics of that, but we're maybe a quarter of the way through them. Maybe. I think that might be approximately the case. But yeah, I'd have to actually pull up the chart and the timeline and count them. There's a lot. I'll say there is a lot of characters, and yeah, I think we might not be quite at a quarter, but we're motoring through them. There's a lot that we have planned, but yeah, there's plenty to go still. How many mice do you think are coming? I can at least ask these kinds of questions, and like I have actually literally no idea what the actual count is, so I can't even give a spoiler for it. I'd have to actually go look it up. But yeah, we have like our list of like, here are all the characters. How many would be too many is something I want to know. Not that that's what we're doing. I'm just curious, like, what would that number look like? Is there a concept of something like that? What is your opinion on that? It really, I think it kind of comes down to like, how does the gameplay work? First off, to determine like how valuable or you know mechanically how well does this set work, right? Like you could have 1,000 mice in an area, and that seems a bit insane. But you know, every hunt would be like totally new. Um, or you could have like 5 mice in an area, but like if the mechanics are solid enough, like that could be enough, right? If the gameplay has structure and loops and it flows, who knows? Um, Over 50, in your opinion? Yeah, that's probably fair. I think ultimately, like the goal is to make it a fun experience, right? Like it's exciting to have new characters to discover, but like when there's like 100 new characters all together, like none of them are necessarily going to feel important, right? Because there's so many. Like you'll have like bosses and maybe like special, you know, um, mechanical characters that will have more kind of like meaning behind them. But you can't make like all 100, you know, feel mechanically significant, in my opinion, if you have that many, right? So yeah, I think doing as much as you can with less is more. If that makes any sense. All right, let's see. But yeah, we have a lot of mice for this release, which is why we had to split the kind of project into two parts. We wanted to kind of actually, have stuff in your hands, be playable, but we couldn't kind of like complete the entire set and have it all arrive by the time we wanted. All right. Yeah, exactly. We don't mind too many as long as they are tiered well. Totally. And I agree completely with that. I think it is entirely based on like, how well the gameplay works, right? If you have mechanics that don't support that many characters and like there's no reason to, like if you had like 30 different characters in one part of the gameplay, uh, you're doing like one thing there, that doesn't really like mean much. It just means you get like a really random, journal of mice, which is somewhat interesting, I guess. But uh, like maybe you could argue that like doing maps would be a thing there, but then it's just like really random and like trying to like purposefully target mice on a map would be terrible there. But if there was like 5 different zones in that and each one had 10 mice or that kind of thing, then having enough to fill out those kind of different groups, that works. You can like specifically go after certain characters and that kind of stuff. So yeah. Okay, that angle on this completely wrong. What was I thinking? Ribbon. Let's fix you. Here's another question that I'm a little curious about. What is your favorite area for having a lot of mice? And what is your favorite area for having very few mice? Hmm. And again, like I think it comes down to how well mechanics kind of like use the cast, right? Like if there's like an area that's got like a ton of mice, but like we're not really kind of utilizing them, then it's just like, just almost random feeling. But then, you know, for a lot, floating islands, yeah, feel like the themes with the types both matches the game and is unique for from other areas. I was not expecting to have to think on a Friday. I apologize. You're getting to do all the thinking for me, because I'm like sleep deprived today. I just did not sleep well for who knows why, but um, yeah, I get to put the onus on you all to use the brain. Floating islands, yeah. Favorite area, period. Nice. Yeah, yeah. Floating islands. Love how the different area or different power types get utilized as well. I mean, I'm literally on the same page with you all there. Floating islands is legitimately one of my favorite areas as well. And yeah, I think it really does kind of like it has such a huge cast of characters, but they all actually like mean something there, right? So that's exciting. Um, what about like a low mouse count? What kind of areas kind of resonate with you where there isn't like a ton of mouse variety, but like it plays well with the small cast it has. This one's a tougher one, I think, to answer, but curious to hear what people have to say about that. Not that this question is like important, but it's pretty cool to like hear what people think about this stuff. Jungle of Dread. Oh, for the artwork specifically. Okay, awesome. It's quite a bit of an older one too, and like mechanically, it's kind of a little bit of more of a kind of like struggle for some. It's not the cleanest implementation, right? We did it early in the career where we were kind of like learning what in the world we can even accomplish through gameplay. But love to hear that it does resonate. At least the artwork is exciting enough to make it work. And I would say when it comes to kind of like the gameplay, although it's lacking, a HUD to kind of like make it fun to go through, it does have the moment of like I am targeting specific mice and using specific gameplay to kind of like accomplish these goals, which feels good. I think it's important where you give player that kind of level of control where they can actually like go and do a thing that they set out to accomplish. Fiery Warpath. I would say there's a good amount of mice in the Fiery Warpath, but like during the phases, like the different waves, you have a small cast, and that works super well, right? Like each mouse actually is meaningful, right? Like you're going after the archers to combo them. You're targeting only those specific mice, and every single mouse has something that they're doing, and they all kind of have importance in their own ways. So I think mechanically, um, in terms of like small group, it works in that regard where it's like every single mouse matters. Uh, you know, so I think that's a pretty cool area. It ends up having a lot of mice in the end, but like mechanically, for each zone, it works very well. Um, Table of contents. Large part of that is only two mice. Yeah, actually, I'd say that's a fair answer. Yeah, and again, lots of mice in the kind of location in total, of course, but like throughout the writing phase, like up until you get to the end game, where you're going after the Mythweaver and the Grammarian gets in your way. largely who you are encountering individually, not super significant. Like you don't even think about like, oh, sweet, I caught that character. Um, but when you're in the final phase, it's literally two characters, maybe three if you mix in the M1K cheese. Um, that a lot of the gameplay is kind of working off of, right? So with only kind of like this is the one I'm after, and this is the mouse that gets in my way. Duality, like that's exciting and fun. So yeah, totally valid answer. Having it be, about kind of just like this moment. There's only two mice, but boy, is that engaging. Um, yeah. Crystal Library. The quests are fun. Hmm. That is a hot take. Um, we're talking about the research assignments. I know a lot of people do not find those super fun. Um, when we first came up with them, that was like very exciting, very fun because that was effectively the first kind of quests that we had really outlined for a player, and how we implemented it was something. But yeah, there's definitely some people that really don't in, enjoy that as much as others. But I'm glad to hear someone is into it. I think it was kind of like part of the frustration was just like people needed to get so many research points before they could kind of move on to different things that they want to do, and maybe we just put that bar a little high. Hmm. Dracano for me just has like three mice, but fits exactly well, and all we all just need that one dragon always. Yeah, yeah. That theme hasn't gone away, has it? But no, I think it does come down to like the exciting kind of like moments, right, where you're trying to get this character, and something opposes you. You have to overcome. Oh, I thought I was on a different layer for a second. Okay. Guess I could have kept that, but it is what it is. All right. Anyways, yeah, some characters might get in your way, uh, but yeah, you're definitely there's always these kind of exciting, or not always, but like the goal is there's always these kinds of moments. The stage is set. You are like facing off against the character you've worked towards encountering, and how much can you accomplish before you're pushed away by it or others, and do you accomplish your goals? Those tend to be a pretty notable moments, right? The boss zones, and I think yeah, like there's even cases where you only have one mouse that can ever be encountered in certain setups. And so technically, there are times when you can only encounter one mouse, and those can be some of the most exciting. Whereas when there are times when you can encounter like 12 different mice, none of those are particularly, if none of those are particularly distinct from each other mechanically, it doesn't end up kind of like doing as much. I know that like in cases like where there is a special mouse thrown in, that can matter a lot, such as uh, when you're climbing the Rift Gauntlet, and the bulwark of the ascent shows up, shoving you back. That's an important mouse. It's very, very kind of like dramatic. And although it's like a mouse you don't want to encounter, it does create more interest and make it more dynamic and exciting. But then, of course, when you find the timid adventurer, um, that's the other side of that coin, where these two mice are significant. The rest in the encounter pool probably don't even notice, without kind of it being kind of like, hey, I'm new to the area, like I'm excited to see the new cast and uh, see what they're about, because that's always fun, obviously. But once you've caught 50 of them, you're and they don't kind of like give you a mechanical kind of you know thing that you need, they're probably not going to be something you're paying super close attention to. So yeah, I think when it comes to areas where there's not a ton of mice, but they are really fun and exciting, it's because the individual mice have a lot of mechanical meaning. Um, they do something, so you're looking for them, and that makes them really special and exciting. Yeah, I think there's quite a few examples of areas where it's like you, the boss, and someone guarding the boss, and those are pretty fun. Okay, let's see. Um, if anyone is like well read on uh, the Don Quixote book, which is one of the most famous pieces of literature ever, um, feel free to chime in and give kind of like input on this design. Uh, so, because we always like to kind of play with, you know, characters' names and descriptions, and like we enjoy a good kind of pun or like reference. We've kind of created our Don Quixote character as Don Quixotic, or at least that's kind of the idea at the moment. Uh, and I think I need to kind of get her to be more of that character. So I want her to feel older than she looks right now. Right now she's got this like fiery teen energy, but I need her to look like a determined like old lady, or something. I don't know yet, but that's kind of what I'm thinking I need to try for this character. And I'm wondering like, should I weather her armor, like rust it up? There's a moment in the story where Don Quixote like finds a bucket, and he thinks it's like the helmet of a great king or something like that. I don't remember exactly. Um, but yeah, I'm like, maybe she should have a bucket on her head instead of a knight's helmet. Um, like the thing is, like, if I weathered the armor, I'm not sure that that really fits who the character is, because he actually took so much pride. He would be, polishing his armor, and he was all about having this kind of like very noble, idea about him. So, but I do want him to look, or her to look, a little kind of like, not having much success with this adventure. Yeah. So I'm just trying to think of like how to bring that kind of energy is the struggle that I think I'm feeling with this one. It's like I'm not sure it really is the character that I think it should end up being. If that makes any sense. Okay, so I think, okay, what I want to try and do is make her look older. So I'm going to make her eyes a bit smaller. Maybe a bit heavier. Give her kind of like wrinkles. I don't know, I'm just going to have to play with the face here and see if I can't figure out how to make this character resonate a bit better. Hmm. Will there be a journal theme for Folklore Finale Part 2? I think there might be, actually. Yeah, that does seem like something we might uh, look to add. I could see us putting a journal theme in there. It is kind of like a, you know, big deal to kind of wrap it up. So I feel like having a journal theme to show that off is definitely going to be something that people would enjoy. Alright, these are terrible wrinkles. Now she looks like she has a mustache. Not, not exactly the goal. She's looking older at least, so there is that. I mean, Don Quixote like had, a very kind of, at least the versions of him that I've seen, he had kind of like, a good curled mustache and goatee and stuff, so they would be fitting, but maybe not for this character. This interpretation, at least. Maybe she's missing a tooth. Nah. But yeah, this is kind of like that moment where it's like, oh man, um, the art is fighting me. Here's the thing that I was just talking about at the beginning, where it's like, okay, I feel that resistance. It's not looking like who I want it to look like, right? But I just gotta push through, and eventually it should get there. So this is something that I think that is maybe a moment to share my perspective on skills and mastery and stuff like that. Um, so the idea of becoming kind of like a master at a skill is uh, something I've kind of like talked about before, but um, something that some people think is like, oh, the sign of someone who has mastered a craft is that they just don't do it badly. They don't make any mistakes. They're just so experienced and so good at it. They it just works. They're just masters at it, right? Works every time. They know exactly how to do it, so it just always works out. And I don't know that that's how I see the sign of someone who has mastery over a skill. I think the sign of it is when you can kind of like uh, run into struggle with a project and always be able to kind of like figure it out. I think that's kind of like the sign of mastery, where because I think that like when you're kind of doing something that's challenging and creative, you should be kind of struggling and figuring out like how to do stuff that's hard, not just kind of like working on things that are easy. Uh, and so I think that the proper sign of mastery is like when you do run into the things that are really difficult, that you can always kind of figure it out and overcome it. That's what I think. Um, and in this case, I am kind of like feeling like this is a struggle. It's very challenging, not quite landing it how I want it to, but I feel confident that I will actually push through and I will get where I want. And I think that's what kind of like makes me good at this is that I can kind of like figure it out. And no, I definitely run into you know, pieces where I'm just like, man, this is like not good. It's not working. I'm struggling. Um, and I think that people would, consider me pretty skilled at this craft of drawing mice specifically. And so, you know, that's what happens. Even people who are like actually considered masters in their field, they definitely have hard days where they're kind of like battling with what they're working on, and yeah. I think the reason they're so good is they can just keep going and figure it out. Okay, she's definitely a lot older now, for better or for worse. Not sure if I really like how she's turning out in terms of just kind of like the look, but why is Alt? The Alt button was being held down somehow. Okay. Give the mouse a shield with a motif like the Viceroy's shield. Maybe. I know that a bunch of the characters we've been giving the Myth Weaver's symbol. She's got it on her belt right now. Some saliva dripping as it opens its mouth. Is she salivating from excitement? Destroying a windmill giant? I don't know. Maybe. I suppose that, yeah, like if she's like yelling, she might be kind of. There might be spittle, I guess. Maybe that's the idea there. Okay. Yeah, I want her to look like she's having a good time. So she's got these laughing eyes now, which I think is great. Because she's here for adventure and is totally delusional, right? She's in her own world, rescuing feeble humans, not humans, mice, from a great evil. Yeah, I think I like her a lot more as an older character here. I think the mouth maybe is just too big, perhaps. I'm going to duplicate the face and try making adjustments. Like if she's kind of hollering at it instead. I don't know. This might be better actually. She's like giving a war cry. Yeah, actually, I think I prefer this. Feels a lot more natural. As long as she doesn't look like she's in pain. But no, she's like shouting for victory or something like that. Okay, now I could see the spittle working. Now I get it. Okay, and I think I want her to be a little bit kind of leaner in the face because I think for the Don Quixote character, he's probably not, you know, eating bounties of meals. And in the illustrations I've seen him, he's quite a lean figure. Yeah, okay. I'm starting to like this now. I'm starting to see this character, this kind of charming warrior. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. This mouth is better. The like dramatic yell for victory or yeah, I like that a lot better. Now she looks like she's gonna do some stabbing. Get that giant queen. Okay, I want her ears to look a little older. So they're bigger and gonna almost be a little more wrinkled. The helix we discussed on last week's stream, I think. That kind of like lobe in the corner. Yeah. Yeah, now she's given him a good war howl. Good for her. You know? Okay, now we need to put that into more shadow. Okay. Thank you for all the emoticons, by the way. I've been seeing those at the corner of my eye. More of a Joan of Arc. Okay. Mouse looks like it's gonna sneeze anytime. It does, actually. It does. You know what? I'll take it. I prefer this look over the kind of just, I don't know. It just wasn't resonating at all before, so at least now I feel like this character is like there's something here. The character didn't really kind of read as having motive before. I don't know. It's hard to say, but it just wasn't resonating. Yeah, now she looks like she is like Granny Weatherwax level of like you don't get in my way. I get in, life's way, and that's its problem kind of vibe, right? Which hopefully is, good for this character. Um, Don Quixote like definitely just kind of took life by the reins and just took it in his own direction, often to the chagrin of literally everyone around him, but he lived an adventure that was extremely delusional. And I think this mouse is too. All right. A crooked end of the tail. Actually, I like that. Giving it like battle damage kind of vibe. The tail is maybe even a little long. So let's try. I do like the idea that yeah, she's definitely kind of like lost battles before, right? Yeah. Battle scars on the ears, honestly, kind of think that might be an idea. Now, Larry does have the energy and vibe. Well, maybe not the energy. He's very scared of things. But like the lanky knight kind of energy. Um, so I do feel like Larry is someone to channel for this character, like really long limbed, kind of rail thin vibe. And I'm kind of like maybe this character needs to have more of that kind of energy. So let's see. Um, hmm. I think the breastplate needs to be kind of tilted a bit more, perhaps. Maybe even shorter. I think the collar, I'm sure there's a really fancy name for this part of the armor, but I kind of want that to stand out and up a bit. I think maybe this needs to go over the face even. Let's just experiment with this real quick. The thing that protect the neck. The gorget? I don't know. Something like that. Let's do an occlusion layer down here just to have things be a little bit more tucked away. And then we'll have a little bit of bounce light coming from the guard there, the neck guard. All right. I think this piece of armor here might actually do better if it's like sticking out. Like that. These are kind of like hip guard things. I'm sure at some point in my life I actually knew the names of some of these parts, because armor is pretty interesting. Uh, the engineering behind plate armor is pretty wild, and neat. Talk about masters of a craft. The people who like designed and constructed armor. Seriously, crazy skills required. All right. Especially like some of the fancy stuff too. I'm a big fan of kind of like adding embellishments and artwork into metal. I do that with throwing axes and engrave them and cool stuff like that. So armor is definitely a place that I've looked to for inspiration. Because if you want to get the fanciest of the fancy, that's where you can look. Alright, so I'm wondering if her head is actually a little big. Feels a little bit large for the body. I think I need to broaden her torso and then also perhaps lengthen it. Because she looks rail thin right now, but like not quite in the way that I think she should. Now she looks kind of stout because her hips are... Yeah, I think her head is too small. Or too large, rather. The opposite. I think that's actually what is kind of like a bit odd. Not by much either. Maybe not even that much. That looks a little more natural. Just the tiniest amount. Okay, we are coming up on 12 o'clock, so we have one more hour before I'm going to sign off for the day. But I think with the face looking a lot more where I wanted it to, I'm a lot happier with this character. Because it just wasn't the character that I was trying to convey before. And now, here we have this kind of intense battle lady. Dame of the Sword. I want to make sure it feels like she has like gray hair. Knights in shiny tin cans. Yeah, knights, they definitely don't just wear metal plates directly on their body. They have like a gambeson underneath to kind of pad, like, yeah, because wearing just raw metal on your skin, or thin clothing would not be fun. It's definitely a case of having padded uh, gear that also it allows the armor to be kind of like fastened directly to it as well. So it's like tie offs and all kinds of things that are used. Could add tears, but I don't want it to appear as if she's in pain. I want it to appear as if she is screaming her battle cry for the heavens to witness. For the heavens to witness and recoil from her power, or something. I don't know. Alright, let's give this a save. It's been a little while. Don't want to lose anything that we've worked up because I am happier with where she's gotten. Um, yeah, I mean, definitely there's still so much kind of rendering in detail that is unresolved. We are not looking at the armor as if it's kind of, anywhere near that. Let's see, though. Okay, so I like, um, let's just kind of analyze the pose, see if there's anything that we need to adjust. So I like the kind of feeling that there is a weight and leveraging off of the handhold here. So it might even just kind of like see about enhancing the look of that. The foot, I need that to feel nice and planted. Um, Perhaps if the arm and body is pushed back a little bit and creates this kind of angle here, then this hip can swing even more in this direction and it'll look even heavier on that side. Because I want her to feel like she's hanging off of this thing. And this through line here, I think should go to the the back of the waist as opposed to the front, because the shoulder is kind of popped forward. Whereas if it's back here, yeah, okay. I'm gonna try that. See it, whoop, wrong layers to do that on. Let's see if I can get everything I need here. Probably not going to. Almost. What other layer do we not have included? This one. Almost. Okay. All right, all that. Yeah. Let's try that again. There we go. Okay, so if I move that there, feels a little bit more like the weight is being pulled by the body. And then I think her whole torso can get pivoted back a little bit. So let's see. I almost need it to be more like this, where I shift the arm forward and back a little bit and even extend it even more. Okay, and then grab the whole mouse and pivot her off the foot. Ooh, not taking the lance with me though. Let's see. Where are you, Lance? Can I just lock that folder? Maybe. Okay, let's try this. All right, grab her, pivot off the foot, rotate. There we go. So now it feels more like there's this weight kind of leveraging off the side of the windmill, right? Like her foot is kind of holding her up, and the kind of like center of balance is further off, right? So let's accept that, and then we can kind of bounce between the two states. So here and there, or rather that versus that. And I do think that this feels more kind of like she's at risk of falling, right? The center balance is kind of pushed further out. There's a lot of weight on the hip now. So that works for me. Yeah. Now, where the foot is positioned with the hand, I'm also kind of thinking like, does this make enough sense? Because like, if we're actually thinking about it, this foot is like pushed up, right? So like, this is a line here where the hand is in line with that. And then this foot is holding here. So it's actually like further up, kind of pushing her more this way, right? So she's kind of like twisting out of position in a way, with this foot being further forward. So the balance isn't great for her, right? She's a little perilous in that pose, which is good. I think that's probably a good thing. But if I did want her to feel more grounded, the foot would be more like here. Then she's ready to spring off. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, actually, we do have a bit of this the sail being kind of ripped. I could maybe make the panels bigger to really show that more. And also the coloring and stuff doesn't really let you see that very effectively. But if we kind of turn that off for a second, we can kind of see, oh, there's a hole behind that. Okay. So let's see. The silhouette, I'm curious as to kind of how we're going to handle the silhouette for this one, because of the windmill at least. So I think... Okay, the hair is not to the ear there. Alright, well... let's fix that. We have a windmill at the top of that cliff. I wonder what else we are going to discover on those cliffs. Indeed. I wonder as well. Okay, there's a bit of a tangent with the feather here and that kind of part of the windmill sail. I think the windmill sail is going to need work anyways, so I'm not too worried about that right now. Alright, these hip plates are off. I should probably actually look up how the armor should be constructed to kind of like appropriately attach those. Also these pauldrons, kind of, I know that they're a bit wonky, so let me... With the arm kind of pulled out to the side here, I'm pretty sure that we need something more like that. This, I don't think I need that there. In fact, I'm gonna make her arm even thinner. Give her really kind of narrow limbs. Okay, elbow. hinge to the elbow there. I should really probably look up actual armor instead of just kind of working off my imagination and recollection. Yeah, usually there's kind of like an elbow cuff type thing, I think. It does look like the the Japanese kind of wall. Yeah, surprisingly, I tried looking up windmills, and a lot of them just have kind of like the wood slats without the sails installed because they're just kind of like not running at the time. But yeah, vaguely a windmill. I don't know how accurate it is, but hey. All right, I should actually look up some proper armor. Because right now I'm like, I kind of know some of the ideas, but I'm probably flubbing it. And for anyone who knows anything, they'll be like, what the heck? This is so wrong. What were you thinking, you silly human who should probably know this stuff? Because armor is cool looking. Alright, yeah, that's what I thought. And I mean, there's loads of different ways that people have done armor and such, but yeah, I don't want it to be so kind of inaccurate that it's kind of just silly looking, right? But anyways, so these often are kind of like a full piece that kind of wraps the elbow, which is probably a good idea considering, you know, joints tend to be weaknesses in armor like this, so you want it to be enclosed. Okay, and then here we can thin that elbow or the arm. These kind of wrist guards, plates, whatever, can be thinned out a lot. Okay, and the arm itself here as well. Gonna lighten up on that. Okay, that's a little more armor-ish looking. ish. Any wind blowing? Probably. Guess there's no easy way to work in the concept of illusion, at least not subtly. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely ways to do it, but yeah, depending on what you're trying to convey, it can be really difficult. Like the idea of her kind of imagining something in this scene, it being a giant or something like that. Like, I don't know, what would you do? Like, have it be kind of like a haze of both images? Um, I mean, maybe that could work. I don't know that that's necessary for this. Hopefully, the kind of um, the scene speaks for itself in terms of kind of like, oh, this is what's going on. You know, I don't know. It's a tough one, honestly. Yeah, I suppose the question is, what's the story we're trying to tell right now? Okay, I think this can maybe flow a bit more. The shapes aren't quite working yet. Okay, just a little over half an hour before we're done for the day. Okay, and then I think if I have this piece here, maybe I'll have the hair out of the way a bit more so I can see this piece of the armor here. I think that reads a bit better. Now you can see that that shoulder is kind of lifting up and the hair is kind of maybe being pushed out of the way because of that a bit. Maybe. Something we haven't really looked at is the grayscale. So doing a value check on it couldn't be a good idea, because right now it's kind of all over the board. There's not a good, strong kind of like, look at this, right? It's kind of a bit chaotic feeling. So what I think we should do is try and kind of resolve some more kind of structure to this. So let's do a little kind of sampling. And so if the face overall is darker, maybe if the hair is lighter, probably not. I think almost need to make the hair darker with the armor. Well, maybe lighter hair does work. If the armor is darker, that might be better. Can even have a gradient going on too. Yeah. So that's one direction to kind of like help make it a little more readable, but I mean, we could do it that way and then just have nice kind of accents in some areas for the armor. A couple little kind of shiny spots. So that could work. I don't hate that. All right, and then alternate angle would be, okay, so darker hair this time. We could probably still have a few grays in there. And then perhaps even lighter armor. This will make her more of a shining paladin look, right? Very polished and righteous armor. Maybe the sail needs to kind of change tone as well. Okay, so that's not terrible either. That definitely feels more kind of like she's been polishing her armor. This feels more like, you know, heavy warrior kind of on the battlefield. This one's a little more fantasy feeling. So shiny, so polished. Hmm. I kind of like this one more personally, but I think part of it could be also the sail needs to be kind of tweaked. So let's try just lightening up the sail. Feather definitely needs to be darker in this case. Maybe changing the color of the feather is a good idea. Might be a little too much on the yellow. Okay, so that's not bad. Let's see it with the other version. Yeah. Black hair makes her look more like a pirate. A dog has eyes as big as mill wheels. Those are huge. Very large eyes on that doggo. Must be asking for the best treats with eyes so round and large. Okay. So what do we think? We'll say this is A. And this is B. What do we prefer? A or B? The tinderbox. I'm not familiar with the tinderbox fairy tale. I know that Liz on our team was someone who kind of knew a lot of fairy tales and dug up a lot of those for our kind of folklore forest, especially the table of contents. Did a lot of kind of digging around, trying to find some, well loved or well known fairy tales and stuff. B? Okay. So we got one for B. Here's A as well. I didn't get those flipped, did I? We'll say, yeah, A is... A. B. Just so that I don't get confused. All right. Yeah, I'm kind of thinking B as well, personally. Yeah. Let's take a look at it in grayscale again. I think there's like some fun detail. Like we could get more dramatic lighting as well, honestly. I believe with B. A is like she's too pristine in my opinion. Like it is the fantasy here, which seems appropriate too at the same time, right? Like um but I think the reality doesn't set in for Don Quixote in the same way it does for everyone around him, where like he sees himself as this gleaming knight, where everyone else sees him as this like buffoon who's kind of causing a lot of trouble. So I think this might be a more kind of appropriate kind of angle. Not only do I think it'll look better visually, especially because we can really punch up some exciting lighting. Um, it just kind of like has more presence, and yeah, I think we're showing the windmill as opposed to the giant. So let's show the armor with more kind of character, and perhaps weathering, wear and tear, and just kind of like a dinged up sword. The lance should be maybe crumpled a bit. Who knows? To kind of show that she just keeps going. She's just railing against everything and won't give up. And she sees herself differently than everyone else does. So I think this is maybe the better kind of balance. And again, to just kind of like bring it back to where it was, right? This is kind of where it was before we started doing this grayscale look. And you can really see the difference in kind of like readability of the silhouette versus here it's just so kind of just noisy. So yeah, I think this is the direction here. That definitely is just much easier to understand what I'm seeing. Okay, I'm gonna go with B. A hair, B armor. We can try that. I think A hair is perhaps, yeah, the pirate hair, I guess, is the idea. See, the problem with A hair is it kind of gets a little too confused with the armor in terms of the value structure. I mean, maybe we can kind of push it even darker. That's it. I do kind of like her with very gray hair, right? That's pretty good too. It doesn't look as old as I kind of liked. But you know, maybe there's some improvements to be made with the hair. Again, this is just kind of like a quick and dirty kind of layer to just balance out the values, as opposed to like these aren't the colors that we'll end up with. Yeah, actually with the sail, I think the hair is going to clash more. So yeah, maybe we do need somewhere between these two, perhaps. Like if I can get that gray in the hair, maybe like this kind of thing. Get salt and pepper. That might be the way to go. Yeah. And then maybe just a little bit more light on kind of the top of it or something. Okay. Yeah, maybe that's it. As long as the armor still kind of reads against it. Hmm. All right, 15 minutes. I think we just need to pick that direction and go. So how does it look with the neutral hair? I think if I darken the armor closer to the hair, whoop, that might work. Because yeah, the completely white hair, not a. The Tinderbox fairy tale is basically Aladdin with a box of matches instead of a lamp, an evil witch, and 3 protector dogs. The witch wants a soldier to retrieve the matches while he gets all the riches the dogs are guarding. But the soldier figures out the matches grant wishes, kills the witch, and hilarity ensues. I mean, that's always kind of like the moral of the story: the witch dies, or the witch eats everyone, something like that. Yeah, when we were kind of like looking through a lot of fairy tales, especially kind of ones that are maybe less prolific, um, they can get real dark. I mean, I think most of them were extremely dark, at least how they started. I mean, it's all about an interesting story, right? So, okay, so I'm pretty happy with the value structure here. So I'm going to give this a save right now, and then I'm gonna kind of drop this through various layers. Okay, so we're gonna come down to this and find where it would be relevant. Oh, I'm duplicating the hair layer. Whoops. That's not the layer I need. It's like, what's happening? Why isn't this working? That's why. Silly me. Why isn't that clipped? Oh, I see. Not happy with that feather right now. I don't think I really applied this to the lance anyways. Yeah, so I don't really need to put that anywhere there. Alright. Yeah, I mean, Disney definitely made fairy tales in general a lot lighter hearted. Um, definitely. Mm, I think I'll lighten this up just a little more. think as long as it's distinct from the hair, then we're good. Okay, 8 minutes. What are some literature characters you would like to see? Now, I will say that we already have kind of picked out a cast of characters we plan on referencing, so it's not to say that we're gonna like grab your idea and run with it. But I'm kind of curious as to like what characters you think of when you're kind of like, oh, this would be kind of a cool character to belong in this fantasy world. References to like important, you know, significant literature characters kind of idea, right? Actually, I think this would kind of curve the visor portion here. The bolt would be even lower down and at an angle here. Because it's actually on the side of the helmet here. Yeah. We'll go a bit darker too. Thank you again for all the little emote reactions. Appreciate it. 5 minutes. 5 minutes. I'm like totally looking at this being like, man, I want to engrave the whole thing, you know. Get all this ridiculous level of detail. I really do enjoy kind of like elaborate and beautiful armors. Anytime I get to see them in a museum, that's where I'll be like just fixated, you know. They're just works of art, honestly. When I last visit to MouseHunt meetup in London, I definitely went into the museums everywhere I could and just kind of stared at armor and all their like fancy engravings and stuff. Because honestly, I'm actually uh, using some of that as, you know, inspiration okay to me. And inspiration for my own kind of crafting. Um, there was also like a really cool watch like timepiece collection, which just has some of the most fancy details and stuff's carved. So that was pretty awesome to discover. All right. All right. Well, I think I should start to wrap it up. I definitely have gotten further along on this piece than I was, and I'm pretty content with the changes we've made. Still, obviously, some work to be done on her. Um, so that'll be happening soon because she is a bit overdue for where she is in the timeline, unfortunately. Got very busy with other pieces of work. Okay, I'm going to merge that down. But yeah, let's enjoy the time lapse for this piece, since you didn't get to see the beginning of it as well. Give this a save, and yeah, since we're wrapping up the stream, let's pop this up here, export time lapse, and we'll set it to all. I kind of really enjoyed this face though, the kind of like, oh, what's happening? But ultimately decided to go with kind of screaming old lady. Yeah, maybe during the time lapse I'll notice something that just felt more kind of like, yeah, that's the character. I think her head is really kind of like squished down. Maybe I actually want to extend her neck up a bit. That might be a good idea. The hair as well. I think the way it kind of drapes all the way to the elbow is kind of just confusing a bit. So I might just trim her hair more. Hmm. Rumpelstiltskin. Yeah. George from Mice and Men. Pied Piper of Hamelin. I feel like we've done the Pied Piper bit in the past. I think in the Gauntlet. We have to have used the Pied Piper before. Have to have. I think there's maybe even multiple references that we've done. Yeah, I think her neck is a bit too kind of jammed down. Maybe I need to kind of lift her head up a bit. It looks a bit kind of crumpled. Yeah, Piper in the table of contents. I thought so. I thought so. Thank you, Christian. Yes, my lance is the lance that will pierce the heaven. Don't believe in yourself, believe in me who believes in you. Um, yeah, love Gurren Lagann, of which there are multiple references in the game already. Yes, the flamboyant flutist. That's right. Yeah, that's our Pied Piper character. Yeah, I think at this point for the piece, it's just kind of going in and doing a lot of detail work. It's a lot of just kind of like rendering of little bits of armor, honestly. Flautist. Yeah, I think with the kind of current value structure we have on her, um, we don't get a good sense of where I plan on taking it with lighting uh, to kind of like really punch up some drama in the piece. Have like a nice cast shadow on the sail, have like a backlit kind of, you know, light beams bouncing off, glinting, if you will, off the edge of the armor. Um, yeah, there's definitely some coolness to be exhumed from this piece. But again, this is a pretty cute pose, just kind of dangling awkwardly with that face. There was something good with this little face here. The little kind of like, what's happening? What did I do? Um, yeah. All right. I think that we're gonna call it. But actually, really quick, before I forget, I do think I want to see about lifting her noggin up a bit and maybe giving her a little bit of a haircut. Hmm. That head tilted forward has some kind of old painting vibe to it. Don't know why. Reminds me of like an old painting. I can't think of what one. Okay. Yeah, I think just that might be enough for having the head not be too crumpled. And then I think I'm going to give her a little bit of a hair trim. Be able to see the arm a little more effectively. And then, wow, that one's on top, eh? Okay. Uh, just a more decent bob. That's more practical of a haircut, I think. Running around doing battle with everyone she can, I think she deserves to have a more functional haircut, don't you? Yeah, that feels a little more acceptable. Okay, the hair, however, let's lighten it up at the edge here. Okay, well, all details I can resolve later, but feeling a little bit better about that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Her hair was definitely not the right shape for this activity. Still not 100% on it, but it feels a little better. Let's take a quick look at the silhouette of the character. Decent. It reads. You know, you got the arm. This arm could maybe read a little cleaner. Maybe the hair is impeding that. The helmet could be, I mean, maybe the head needs to be moved back and tilted and all kinds of stuff. But okay, I'm definitely significantly happier with where it ended up today. And I think I broke through that kind of like the element of like this is fighting me right now. I feel like I know where to take the piece. It's gonna work. At least that's how I feel about it at the moment. But that's all I got for today. um, Sorry, it's a bit of a shorter one. Also, do I have a Larry link? Let me see. I do. Thank you, Michelle. Let me pop this into the chat for you all. Boom. And da, 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 da. Digby Drillbot upgrade with Gurren Lagann shades when? Great, great question. I love that. Enjoy some magic essence from Larry, the Friendly Knight, who I'm sure runs away in fear of Don Quixotic. But yeah. All right. Well, that's going to be it for today. I hope you all enjoyed. I know it was a bit of a shorter one, but I got other things I got to get done today. But thank you for hanging out. Thank you for chatting and just being you. Okay, well, until I see you next time, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and happy hunting, everyone. I'll catch you later. Bye for now.